So my name is Carrie Harper. I'm from Kaya Park, where I've lived all my life, where I still live, where I've raised my family. And I got into politics accidentally, really, from a route of community campaigning around issues like inappropriate housing development on green fields. And the people who supported those campaigns going back to around 2006, sorry, it's quite a while back now. The people involved with supporting those campaigns were Plaid Cymru activists. So it was a combination of the work around those campaigns, and in my 20s I started finding out a little bit more about Welsh history and culture as well, and the combination of those two things drew me to Plaid Cymru. I think it's the opportunity for change, which sounds quite cliched, but in terms of this election it's very, very true, isn't it? I think politics in Wales has been managed decline, a lot of people would describe it as, over the last 27 years, and I think there's a real platform to do things very, very differently. And there are obviously two very different futures on offer with this election. It's a two-horse race between Plaid Cymru and Reform, so two very different visions about what Wales can be in the future. And for me, it's an opportunity to really look at a situation where we can realise our potential in Wales, because I don't think that we're anywhere near realising that. I think we've got a lot of potential that's untapped with the right mindset in terms of leadership in government. I think we can unleash a lot of that potential. I think that's really exciting. The biggest issue that's raised with us on the doorstep by far is health. So it's things like waiting lists, it's things like corridor care, and it's access to GPs. Are the things that get raised consistently and have been raised for a very, very long time. Obviously, the situation with Betty Cadwallader's Health Board being in special measures for almost a decade now. So people want to know how we get from A to B. Again, I think people are frustrated and fed up at the lack of progress and seeing things just getting worse. So they want to know how we get to grips with some of those challenges. So in terms of waiting lists, one of the priorities we've set out in the manifesto is getting those waiting lists down. We know they're made up in the majority of things like knee and hip operations, hernia operations, cataract removals, those type of things. So we've worked on recommendations from the Royal College of Surgeons, who've set out how those waiting lists can be brought down through surgical hubs. So we're looking to create 10 surgical hubs across Wales that will deal with those type of operations in volume, so that we can get those waiting lists down. Because until we do that, you can't deal with lots of the other issues within the health service, while all the resource is going into managing increasing waiting lists. So we need to get those down as a priority. And then issues like corridor care, for instance, we know across North Wales we've lost 20% of beds over the last 15 years. So that's why we've got people being treated on trolleys in corridors, for instance. We're also talking to people who are telling us they can't get an appointment with a GP. So inevitably, if you've tried to phone the GP a few days on the run, you can't get through, you're going to end up in A&E. So we're looking to recruit 100 new salaried GPs specifically to look at tackling problems and shortages with out-of-hours care. So we hope that that will then take some of the pressure off A&E as well. So those are the priorities, and we've set out in quite a lot of detail how we're going to look to tackle those in the first term of a Plaid Cymru government. It's to do with the multipliers. So we know in Scotland, for instance, there are 3 different multipliers. The situation in Wales has not changed for a very long time. If you go into the high streets, whether it's Wrexham, whether it's Deeside, business owners will tell you the same thing. The biggest issue is business rates. And they're at a real disadvantage because they've got that town centre premium for footfall that we know has gone a long time ago in reality, with people moving to online shopping, people going to out-of-town retail parks that have got free parking and all the rest of it. So they're at a real disadvantage, and it's very unfair at the moment. And we've seen in Scotland there are ways to look at that system to make it fairer and to help our businesses on the high street. So that's what we'll be looking to do. It's been a long-standing policy, but obviously if we're in government, we'll have the opportunity to implement that. The wording nations of sanctuary is in the manifesto. Our policy is, in terms of immigration more generally, that we want to see it devolve to Wales. We believe that decisions about Wales should be made by people here. We want to see a fair system that's fit for purpose and reflects our needs. We don't have that, unfortunately, under the current Westminster system. We don't have control over migration. whilst wanting a fair system, we also need to make sure that we treat people with dignity. And there's a lot of misinformation online about the Nation of Sanctuary scheme, which we know in the majority of funding in that scheme has helped Ukrainian refugees, for instance. And it's not about numbers, it's about helping people to integrate, helping people to find work where that's appropriate, volunteering opportunities, language learning, Welsh and English. So when people understand what Nation of Sanctuary actually is and what that funding has been spent on, people are usually quite surprised, because there's this misinformation that it's about increasing migration numbers, which is utter nonsense. And unfortunately, with the way things are online at the moment, you have to tackle those misinterpretations to get the nuance of the discussion about what the actual issues are. Well, the same as it means for somebody living in Wrexham. So we've got cross-border healthcare now, haven't we, under a devolved system. So people travel back and to. My dad's from Merseyside, half of my family are English, so those connections aren't going to change. And health is a really good example, I think, that you've picked on there, because if you look at the situation with some of the hospitals in the northwest of England, so let's take Walton, for instance, 20% of their patients are from Wales. So the viability of that hospital depends on Welsh patients. So there has to be that working relationship. And with a system that's already devolved and separate from the system in England, it's a good example of where that cooperation can still happen. And I'd envisage that being the same post-independence. So I don't think the issue of cross-border relationships is particularly one that anybody needs to be worried about. We can see that they can work, and that will continue. So overall, if you look at numeracy and literacy and the PISA results for Wales back in 2022, they're not great. We know that. If you look at best practice in other countries, so if we look at Estonia, for instance, where they have some of the best results, they've got things like funded wraparound childcare. So that is a key policy that we've got in this manifesto, to offer free childcare 20 hours a week over 48 weeks of the year for children aged 9 months to 4 years. So it's a cross-cutting policy that it's about putting money back into people's pockets in terms of the cost of living crisis. It's also about the attainment gap. We know from those international examples that getting that early childcare in place makes a difference in the longer term in terms of results. So that's why we're looking at policies such as free childcare. We know as well, we hear the frustration from teachers about needing time to teach, about wanting more emphasis on professional development. So you'll see that referred to also in the manifesto. But we need to look at best practice, and that's what the new literacy and numeracy plan will be based on. But there's more fundamental foundational things going on in terms of policy, like the childcare policy, that will make that difference over a longer term as well. I can actually point to a party policy that's already been implemented in terms of free school meals. And that is an ambitious policy. Labour voted against implementing that 7 times. And we were relentless in opposition in pushing that policy, because we know the impact that it'll make in terms of poverty levels and attainment. It follows on a little bit from the previous question. So I'm very proud of that. People said it was too ambitious, it couldn't be done. We did it. We secured that as part of the cooperation agreement, and I'm really proud of that. And if we can do that level of ambitious policy, get that implemented in opposition, and just imagine what we could do in government. I think we will see waiting lists come down, because we've made that a priority. We will see a big difference for families in terms of the affordable childcare policy. That's going to be worth £30,000 per child at full rollout. So you can imagine if you've got 2 children, that makes a big difference to your income. It will get more people back into work. We know it pays for itself long term because of the economic impact. We'd be looking to see improvements in terms of educational standards through the literacy and numeracy plan. And we've also got detailed policy around tackling child poverty as well, and also building the Welsh economy. So we've proposed a new national development agency for Wales, focusing on small and medium-sized businesses and supporting them to grow and retaining them in Wales. We're looking at a skills audit so we can better match the skills that businesses want to the training that we're providing, because we don't actually have that match up at the moment. So we need to get some foundational things right that will make a difference long term. And Yeah, there's also things like proactive policy on things like procurement. So Welsh Public Services are spending £8 billion a year, and at the moment only 55% of that is retained here in Wales. We've got a target to make that 70%. That'll create 35,000 new jobs. We've talked about it for a long time. That's not about new money. That's about spending existing funding much better than we are at the moment. So I think all of those things together have cross-cutting impacts, don't they? But you can see the trajectory that we're going on and why we're prioritising those specific areas. I think because we need a party that is based in Wales to reflect the needs of Wales. Plaid Cymru is the only party in this election that is actually based here in Wales. And we need to see things through a Welsh lens, because things will only improve in Wales when we start making decisions in our own interest, and voting for our own national party is the starting point for that journey. And I think if we do that, it may the future's bright.